Welcome to the Sacred Window Podcast. Here, we look closely at the intersections of the postpartum window, the Ayurvedic perspective on health and healing, and the universal mother principles that are the keys to giving and receiving effective care. Hello, I'm Christine Devlin Eck. I'll be taking you through interviews with professionals who are making a profound difference in the lives of their clients, conversations with individuals brave enough to share their stories of vulnerability as a way to lift up others, and my own journey through birth, parenting, caregiving, and building a conscious business. We are here to honor the sacred windows, the profound transitions in life that give it all meaning. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the podcast. I'm delighted and honored to be in conversation with Christine Eck once again. You'll be delighted to know that I was also on her podcast a few weeks ago, so you can check out that episode on her Sacred Window podcast. And we also reposted the episode on this feed here, so you get lots of opportunities to see different facets and perspectives of our two worlds coming together. So check out those episodes as well. If you're new to Christine, her passion is accessing the subtle and unique keys to healing and vitality. And she's a busy mother of 4 boys. I can only imagine how busy you are. And so you're using the skills that you teach on a regular basis. Christine is an Ayurvedic health consultant, a birth and postpartum doula, and the founder of the Center for Sacred Window Studies. And that's an education platform. It teaches all about conscious postpartum care, and it's inspired by we'll edit that. It's inspired by Ayurveda and other universal traditions found around the world. One thing I really love about Christine's work is she's established these universal mother principles that she infuses into all of the care that she offers and trains others in giving. And it's a way to distill and access these foundational qualities of giving and receiving that are essential to both experiencing being cared for and offering care to others. You can check out her Sacred Window podcast and her blog, as well as monthly educational events that she hosts to build awareness and opportunities for people to work with and support new families. So you can check out all of the links to learn more about Christine and her work in the show notes, as well as other conversations we've had together. And Christine, I'd love to welcome you. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Oh, Grace, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
We had such a rich and beautiful conversation on your podcast a few weeks ago. And I think I wanted to start by jumping a little more directly into your world. You have 4 sons, I have 4 brothers. So I was not a mother to 4 boys, but I was around 4 boys growing up. And that is a hero's journey. We'll say that. And I'm interested in how you found your way into this kind of work, how it's intersected with your journey as a mother. And let's start there, actually.
Thank you so much for asking that. And it's one that I, never quite know how I'm gonna talk about this because I feel like I'm trying to sort of read the label from inside the bottle. One of my teachers said that, and I think it's like such a good analogy of like, I don't really understand exactly what is happening in my life, but I know that I'm called to be the best that I can be for these people. I know that these beautiful children have come into my world on purpose. They chose this. I'm here. We're all doing this. And so we're figuring it out. And how I have learned how to be better at figuring it out because I wasn't always feeling very confident. And, there's moments where you're like, how do I even handle this? But then there's other moments where we're tapped in and I'm reminded that I'm not in this alone. I'm held, I think, by quite a bit of divine energy that's helping me out here. But I've always felt called to the healing arts and alternative healing arts. from way before I became a mom. And I think it was probably only a matter of time before I found the science of Ayurveda. But before that, it was a spiritual path, learning from herbs, learning from stones, learning from anything I could get my hands on that helped me to understand myself more deeply. And I come from a family of two girls, my sister and I. And so to, have watched this family grow of mine and have all these children, be boys, identify as boys, is really quite something. And I can't explain any of it, but I can just say that the opportunity to parent them in, like, we've gone through some challenging times and we've gone through some really smooth times, but every single part of that journey has been my teacher, has taught me how to show up better for myself, to show up better for them, for my husband, for my business, for anyone who I have the blessing to sit with, like you today, here in this moment. So, whatever is happening, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to, like, expand more fully into what's possible in myself. And I think when we have to face things that are asking a humongous amount from us, whether it's parenting, whether it's, caregiving for somebody else, whether it's any kind of challenging situation, there's real beauty on the other side of that. In fact, like, that conversation just came up with one of my boys yesterday. He's in sixth grade and he's doing this new thing. And I could tell, like, yesterday was a bit of a meltdown moment. He's nervous. He's like afraid to go do this new thing. And so, we went in there, like, let's talk about it. Let's, like, what happens when we do really scary things? What happens? And then he came home at the end of the day after doing it and he was like bright-eyed and he did it. So there's such lesson in being a guide for somebody else, helping to, like, support and usher somebody else. And maybe that's why I'm so drawn to, supporting new families and teaching other people. Maybe that's why I love to teach, is because it helps me to understand myself on a deeper level.
Mm. There's so much in what you just said, and I think there's something that I see a lot with new parents or people who are about to be new parents, is that they're starting to get a whiff of this tremendous amount of responsibility. But there's also this sense sometimes that I feel like people think they're doing it alone, that, like, it's all their responsibility, their child's destiny, their child's opportunities, that suddenly it's like every drop of water I drink is now so much more important. It's almost like there's taking too much of a burden, in some ways, and something that you really skillfully or beautifully pointed out is that there's also a way that there is some divine energy in this exchange of becoming a parent. And I don't know if you think this, but the way that also the kids have their own connection to divine energy, their own path, their own cosmic team, and that, of course, the role of being a parent, a mother, is so important, but also that's not the only thing going on. Could you speak to that a little bit, perhaps maybe from inside the bottle, but also what you see as teaching and facilitating for others?
Yeah, yeah, this is a really beautiful topic. And so much of it, we come into, maybe wanting to be there for other people and support other people, whether it's, as a parent wanting to make it easier for our kids, or, do everything for our client. But ultimately, what I have found in both arenas is that it is impossible for us to take full responsibility for somebody else's journey. We can't do that. And I have learned this through a lot of heartache. Of course, like, and I think that there is something so incredibly huge that we have a reckoning as maybe like a new parent that we have to go through of like, what is this role? And maybe some people experience it more smoothly than others. I don't know, but every single person is going to have this portal, this transition, this becoming that happens. And it's not always clear. It's not always, I don't want to say that it's really ever easy. I mean, it can be filled with love, it can be filled with support, or it can be filled with feelings of isolation or bewilderment. We just, I think the important thing is honoring the time that it's going to take to find that and never, ever stopping the search for the ability to trust and the ability to surrender a little bit and realize that, what happens if we open ourselves up and say, I'm ready to be helped. I'm ready to trust. I'm ready to trust my child that they have a path that they are on. And I think it's hard to think about that when they're so young and they're so dependent. I think it's a little easier now as my kids are getting older, where I'm like, no, stepping back a little bit and noticing like, oh yeah, like they're really gravitating over here, or they're, kind of playing around with this type of thing, or, whatever it is. But I will just say that for me, the ease and the joy of being a parent and the ease and the joy of holding space for my business has really unfolded as I've allowed it to really trust and let that divine presence come in, because I notice that when I am tuned into that source, everything else feels different. Everyone else responds different. I notice that my children become calmer when I'm in a space of trust and connection with myself. My business goes smoother, like the day to day, everything feels different. My relationship with my husband is impacted. Like the best thing I can do for it is to be really self-connected. And for me, that comes with trusting that I am not alone. I am filled with the universal mother, the divine, like however people want to describe it or call it. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But it's that process. And without that process, I think I would still be at a place of overwhelm and stress and fear, because there's nothing so important. I remember like looking at this phrase that was written on the bathroom wall when I was pregnant with my kids. And it was like, becoming a parent is deciding to wear your heart on the outside of your body. It's terrifying. You love so much. And I'm overwhelmed by like the fragility of everything. And yet here we are. So I've got some choices. I can like really give focus to myself and plug myself in and remind myself when I like get unplugged. I can trust that we're being held by something bigger. Or I can live in that place of feeling all by myself and like it's all on me. So it's a practice. It is not something that, you get it and you're like, oh, good, that work's done.
I did that one time.
Yeah, I did it. I got there. We're good now. Um, but that's what life is about, right? It's a practice.
Yeah, there's so much wisdom in what you shared. I think something I hear in what you're saying is also embracing our limitations as just human beings. Like it's literally not even possible for me to be responsible for everything that this kid is going to do, touch, react to have happened to them. It's just literally not possible. And something I hear you saying is you're like part of embracing that limitation feeds connection to self. And I think a common there's such a massive reorganization when someone has a child. Not only are you becoming an entirely different person, I've noticed and found in watching some of my friends have kids, there's also like a massive like karma cleanup moment that tends to happen with a kid. And there's also some fear sometimes about how the kid I think often when people talk about having a kid, if they don't have one or it's a new experience, there's this fear that the kid is going to be an obstacle to like my destiny. Like now I just have this other thing to take care of that's going to be in the way of all the things that I think I have to do in like my work, in the world, etc. Which tends to happen a lot for women, I think, because women tends to often be assumed the primary caregiver in a lot of ways. Um, at least where I am and the people that I'm close to. And what I hear you saying is that what you've had to learn in embracing the fragility of life and what you've had to learn in embracing your limitations and being connected to yourself positively impacts all of the things that you touch and take care of. Does that feel true? What have you noticed in that part of your journey, or what have you seen with others?
Yeah, I wish that I had a bit of a better skill set around this when my kids were quite young. Um, because I did feel that longing for a wider connection with the world. I felt like, my perspective and my experience was all happening in this very small ball. And I wanted to be connected in ways that I wasn't feeling that. But I think it's important to listen to those feelings because I think there's a lot that we can create within whatever, maybe if I wouldn't have felt that, I wouldn't have created all the things that we've done with the Center for Sacred Window Studies. It was that call that I was supposed to be helping in some other ways other than in my home. And, it's going to be such a unique process for each person. But what is coming up for me a lot recently, and something that we've talked about a lot in our community, is learning to really listen to that wise teacher inside. Like we're never, ever, ever without guidance. And when we get quiet enough and when we give ourselves permission to trust what we hear, what we feel, it changes it changes the equilibrium of everything that's happening within us and around us. So, there are, you know, the children that come to us and like we're meant to do this. Like we're all in this together. There's, here we are, we're this family, or we're, this is what's happening. And within that, I think there's tremendous opportunity to get to know our inner voice in a way that oftentimes we'll bypass because we're looking at pressure from the outside, or we're looking at our phones and having expectations of ourselves that aren't sourced from that inner place. And so, I used to travel in a band. My husband and I played in a band and we like traveled around and we sang and like, obviously that stopped. I was like, no, that's not what's happening anymore. I went to school for theater. I was like ready to go be an actress, but like that is not what it changed. Everything changed. And I think that within what is in front of us is the opportunity to create the most out of what we are seeking on some inner level. It's a mystery. It's not always, there's no like 5-step process to like, figure it all out. However, that voice is never not there. And so to be able to find spaces, even when your kids are running circles around you and you're exhausted, however, you can not abandon that seeking, like just do it. Even if it's messy, even if it doesn't look the way you want it to look, even if it doesn't feel the way you wish it felt, someday it will. Like even now, my littlest is 8, my oldest is 18. It's so busy, but it's also like there's spaces that are opening up because I'm not chasing them around like I was when they were little. Like it changes and it unfolds. It's like this beautiful rose that's kind of unfolding. And as that like unfolding happens, you realize, oh, now there's some spaces right here. Oh, I can settle in and get to know this. And then, it will continue to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pause there.
Yeah. The I've heard from a lot of friends who have basically they've when their kids have started to get into that elementary school, middle school phase, and then they look back on sort of the blur that was postpartum and having infants and really young kids. There's this reflection of, I wish I had just let it be what it was. Like there was part of me that was trying to like crawl to the place where I would like have the space that I have now, and now looking and like fighting against what was happening at that time. And they look back and wish that they had just surrendered to this is what time it is when it was happening. And one of the ways I talk about what you're talking about is that now is the seed for next. Like what's next only comes from whatever is here right now in this moment, what's happening. And I love that you're pointing to it is possible to locate the knowing at any moment. And whatever it is right now somewhere. We may have just lost our ability to find it or see it. And like that's our number one job. If we can't find it, we need to locate that part of ourselves that can know. And I don't even know if it's knowing the quote right thing. I think it's just knowing what to do next or what to do right now and taking that burden again of like, was this the right thing to do or the best thing? It's like, it's just the thing to do. Like, and I think that connection to self is perhaps the most important thing to steward at that time. You may or may not agree with that. Um, and I think I'm interested too in what do you feel? I love Ayurveda. I'm not a practitioner, but the little bit of knowledge that I do have and have experienced has just helped my body and my life so much. And I'm interested in from this birth care, parental care, postpartum care perspective, what do you feel that the net or the framework of Ayurveda brings to those processes that isn't really present in what we would consider mainstream care or just a quote standard care? What does this more like holistic weave bring to those seasons of life?
Yeah, such a good question. I'm so grateful for it. Um, I remember how I felt like when honestly, I didn't know that much about Ayurveda when I decided to go to school for it. I just knew that I was supposed to do it because I listened to that voice and I was like, okay, well, whatever, like we're here, let's see what. And it was a 2-year program. I left and I was like, oh, damn, like this is exactly where I am supposed to be. And so I didn't know anything about the protocol for postpartum care at the time. I just knew that I was like drinking in this knowledge like I hadn't had anything to drink in a year. I was so into it. And I became pregnant a year into my program again. So this is my second child. And I knew, from having my first, that um, post like after he was born was really hard in a way that surprised me, really surprised me, because I am a preparer. I am a reader. I am a very diligent student of whatever is coming up. So I felt ready. My birth was wonderful. And then all of a sudden, I was really blown away at how hard it was.
How are you sharing your gifts and passion for caregiving with others? In a world where education and awareness around the postpartum window is lacking or missing from our modern systems, we have a profound opportunity to shift that paradigm. You may be a few simple offerings away from making a truly impactful difference in the lives of mothers and families in your community. We are here to support your journey in the ways that work best for you. Schedule a conscious care strategy session to meet one-on-one with me, and let's identify the right next step for you to begin a path of conscious care for new families that fits your life and your needs. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session to schedule a time that works best for you. That's www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session.
So here I am. My son is 18 months old and I'm in Ayurveda school and I find out that I'm pregnant again. And so I decide, to let's figure this out. A colleague of mine in school with me was like, you have to look at this woman, Yisha Oaks. She's teaching about postpartum care and Ayurveda. So that set me down this whole path that I've never veered from. And what I've learned is that the way that we understand medicine and health and healing in the West is very much giving the expert the lead, and we, just if something starts going wrong, we'll pay attention to it, and then we'll go to that expert and they'll give us what we need to be fixed, and then we'll hope it works. And what we discover in ancient systems of medicine, where the social structure was very different, is that we have the autonomy over the foundation of our health. Each one of us is different. And so the way that I understand perfect health for me is different than the way perfect health feels and looks like for you. And your health and how you understand that is happening on your physical body. It's happening in your heart and in your emotions. It's happening in your mental processes and your sharpness and your capacities in your mind. It's happening in the sensory level and how we, bring in information into our body through our senses, and how we process things through our digestion and our elimination. So all of these things are how we understand in Ayurveda our health to be. And so what makes it so beautiful and empowering is that we are our most informative teacher. We are living in this body, this being. So our ability to pay attention and to listen to our body, to notice changes that are happening, all of this is information that helps us understand when things are moving from a place of balance to a place of imbalance. And when we understand the lens of Ayurveda, which is very synchronous to other ancient sciences as well, we have the framework and the know-how to be like, okay, I'm out of balance a little bit over here, and so I can do X, Y, and Z, and it will come back into balance. And so therefore, we're constantly paying attention to how we feel. It's not like, let's wait until something goes wrong, and then we do whatever we want, pay attention or not. And then when something goes wrong, then we'll look at it. So it's building that foundation. And that's why Ayurveda so beautifully complements Western medicine, because this is how we're learning to live on a day-to-day basis, understanding which foods make us feel off and which foods make us feel vibrant, understanding, what sleep schedule makes me feel like a zombie and which sleep schedule makes me feel like I can do anything. All of that is different because each of us has this unique constitution. So it's super, I mean, it's lifetimes of study, but it's something that people really get excited and nerd out on. I encourage you and your listeners to just play around with it and always remember that you're your best Ayurvedic teacher. But for postpartum specifically, what I learned that blew my mind is that the postpartum window, along with menarche and along with perimenopause and menopause, these are very specific times that have an impact on the rest of health moving forward. And when specific care is given during that time, the body responds at an accelerated level. It's like we're just primed to be reset. So it's exciting to think about, oh my gosh, there's so many gaps that can be filled with this wisdom that the modern family is experiencing. So it's something that, to take it one step further beyond that, and I'll pause, is that none of this happens in isolation. So when we are receiving postpartum care or when we are learning this care, we now have this access and this toolkit that becomes applicable throughout and ongoing. So yes, students come in and they learn the lens for postpartum care, but the tools that they gain are immediately applicable for themselves and themselves in 6 months and themselves in 6 years and themselves, down the line. Like it's always a toolkit that is available. And that to me is the greatest gift.
It is such a gift. And I think it's really profound the way that you describe, I mean, these quote sacred windows, if you will, of time. I don't know that I hear about people talking about, for instance, a postpartum window or a perimenopause window as this profound opportunity to sort of rebirth the body with the right attention and care and resources. And I think but if we think about it from a holistic and a natural perspective, it feels suddenly like, of course, that makes the most sense because that's what happens in the world when we look outside. And I was nodding my head so hard at all the things that you were talking about Ayurveda. And I think one of the biggest gifts that I've received from it is, well, any holistic system is going to appreciate complexity. And I think it's harder to write the quick tip articles about that are very clickbaity because so often the more you immerse yourself in a holistic system or you're interfacing with holistic care practitioner, there isn't an easy answer. It depends. Let's see. How is it for you? Like it's something that's much more complex, but I think when we find ourselves immersed in the way that we can be seen and held within that complexity, it can be so profound. I know that for me, when I first interfaced with Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, I think those two things by themselves are things that have just radically changed my life and nurtured me so much and continue to. I wasn't even aware of how off balance I was because I was so just used to my day to day. I remember the first time I went to acupuncture and this woman was very grumpy and did not care at all about how I felt about needles or whatever. And but she said, "You're very stressed." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm a very chill, grounded person." And then she also got right in my face, like a grumpy old lady would, and looked me in the eye and she said, "You heal yourself." And then she just like stabbed a needle in my foot and left the room. And I felt my whole body over the next 20 minutes. It felt like someone crawled inside of my body, turned down every single knob by at least 50%. And I remember being like, I'm about to cry thinking about it. It was like, is this what I'm supposed? Is this normal? Because if this is normal, I've been stressed out of my fucking mind like my whole life. And so I think, which is so different than waiting for something to break. And now I've attuned myself so much to what feeling good can feel like that I get very slightly off and there's like a correction. Like you're saying, I know how to correct it. I know, cold raw food, not really for me, even though everyone in the world on wellness.com is going to say, pack it in a smoothie and drink it. No, ma'am, no, thank you, not for me. And what a gift that is to be able to attune to yourself so exquisitely. And I can imagine as well, at least my experience, and you can tell me if this is true for you and as you train others in care, that now that I have that attunement on such a more precise level for myself, I'm much more attuned to it for others as well. Like it's strengthened my perception to be able to sense that for others as well. And I don't know if you experience that or if that's part of how you facilitate training and awareness for care as well.
Yeah. Yes. That brings it all back, Grace. It's like when you have access to that alignment within yourself, and it doesn't mean like we have to be perfect or we have to heal ourselves, like we got to figure ourselves out before we can do it. Like that's a bad story. That story is not helpful. However, like really giving priority to seeking in here, that makes the impact of how we can better help others even greater. If we're serving from a place of complete depletion and disconnection, how is that going to be impactful? And, that's where the universal mother principles come in, because it's like, okay, like, am I listening to myself? Am I honoring myself with non-judgment? Am I giving compassion for this moment? Am I trying to make things too difficult? Like, can I make things simpler here? Can I be more flexible? Like, just checking. And what we find is any one of those small intentional practices, it's like, just, I want to be centered so that I can best support this moment, whether it's my kid, whether it's my client, whether it's this conversation. There's it's about the intention, and for me that has to be there, because we could maybe drive ourselves crazy by like trying to be perfect and trying to like hold it all, but that's not helpful. It's not effective. So yeah, it kind of comes full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah, like a holistic thing does, which is so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what all of these things really point back to for me, and I know it's something that we talked about in our conversation on your podcast, is that what really it all points back to, the first acupuncturist I went to who didn't speak English and shoved a needle in my foot, what she was pointing me towards was that like it's inside me. Like I have it. Like she doesn't have some magic thing that I don't have. She's going to help me orient to the now and to the moment and my body's own innate desire towards wholeness and balance and capability towards wholeness and balance. And I'm so grateful for that perspective, not only for myself, but for others and how the world works. And as you were pointing out with, your kids, et cetera, it's it also makes me so appreciative of just how we're different. Even just looking at me and my husband's relationship, the things that make him feel good, sleep wise, food wise, restoration wise, are completely opposite of what make me feel good, what make me feel rested and nourished. And I think if I didn't have this perspective, and if we didn't have this shared between us, it would be very easy to sit on my throne of righteousness and be like, you're not doing the right thing. You're not right. You don't feel good. You should be doing what I'm doing, which is just what we love to do in the world, isn't it? And I think seating it on this the humility and the precision and the beauty of our own little flower being on the world and learning how to tend to it does naturally give us a perspective, or at least my experience, a perspective of humility and appreciation for how other flowers may bloom differently and need a different kind of care, even though the medicine does always seem to point back to it's close to you, you have it, you are it, somewhere right now, there it is.
think there's such opportunity for having, it's interesting, like hearing you talk about, your husband and being so opposite, because I really relate to that. And what I, have learned over time and continue to try to practice is, you know, when I feel judgment come up, like that will come in the way of what I actually want to experience. So the practice of, releasing judgment on somebody else. It's easy to judge the people that are closest to us, but like
So
turning,
much
like
fun.
on purpose, turning it around and being like, you want to experience more love and closeness, give more love and closeness. Even if you're like, I don't think you should be eating that. I don't think, whatever, like that's them. Like it has to
Yeah.
be, we can't hold that because it will become an energetic barrier to
Hmm.
what it is that we actually want to experience. That's probably a whole nother conversation.
It's a whole other conversation, but it is so true. So just pro tip in general,
Yeah.
let people do their thing.
And love them and love them.
And love them. And if they want your opinion, they'll ask for it.
Yes.
And I found that, how do you approach that with your children? Because I think with kids, there is, as they're growing more independent, there is that slight, mm, I imagine there's this ongoing dance, right? Between like letting them make choices, but also you're playing with responsibility in a different way. They have like a bigger range to play with their choices and experience consequences. So, are there ways that you approach trying to sort of help your kids make choices that are you can see from your vantage point or in their best interest, but then also, letting them make decisions and then experience the consequences of those, even if it's not what you would have chosen? Do you mind speaking to that dance a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm totally figuring it out as I go. But in general, to me, like my guidance system is always like, does something feel off? Because if it feels off, like let's say no. Let's like talk about this. Um, it drives my kids crazy, but like they kind of have different boundaries because they're different people and it feels different between each of them. So like one set of boundaries or expectations like doesn't actually fit this kid over here. So it's always like the so and so got and I'm like, I'm sorry. I know that that's not fair, but like this is what is right. This feels more right now. So we're just gonna like, but I also, so it's definitely about the feeling and like what's at the root maybe of what's happening, like if this is where Ayurveda and understanding constitutions comes in really handy because my kids are very different from each other. So I can see in their like moods and in their, digestion, and how that reflects in their behaviors. I can see, well, he's like a real Vata Pitta guy. And so like he's like real quick to like get agitated about things. And then my Kapha boy over here is like, just really drags his feet to do things when he's, so it's knowing how they are different in that constitutional way helps me parent them in a way that's most appropriate for, like I know that, some of them like will need like me to get a little more aggressive and abrasive with like my communication to them because otherwise they'll just like, and then others like I gotta like approach it real calm and quiet because they're more reactive, so it's knowing that has been tremendously helpful for me. But mostly just talking to them a lot, like just having conversations and like asking them to share, it's I have found that like the things that feel most awkward to talk about, if we just do it anyway and like get it, like get it going, then the next time it becomes easier. Then the next time it's even easier. And then it's just like, oh yeah, we talk about these things in my house. It becomes whatever. But I will say that I feel very close to all of them. And I feel like they they will communicate with me in the way that will help me to parent them best. And if I can really sense what's at the root of whatever it is that's going on, if it's, you can feel when it's right and aligned, and you can feel when it's not. And that's the guide.
That's
And
so
sometimes we're
beautiful.
more fluent at it than others.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I think that, I mean, and I love it. It so makes sense that you also have these universal mother principles really as a landing pad. It's like so many parents want to be close to their kids. They want to feel like their kids can come to them and talk to them about things. And I'll say, like, for me growing up, like, I'm sure my parents would have loved that from me and would probably love that from me. But there's too much of an agenda. Like, if you want someone to feel like they can come to you and share with you, it must be met with non-judgment. It must be met with compassion, like, or it must be met with this wholehearted embracing of who they are right now, how they are. Like, that's really the fundament of that freedom and that beautiful trust you have with your kids that you give them on purpose that you were describing at the beginning. And I'm wondering with when people come to you to learn and engage with your center and your facilitation and your trainings, I'd love for you to talk more about that, where people can begin to interface more with your work if this is something that they're interested in, and what kind of person, where are they usually in their journey when they come to you and decide that this is something they would love to either supplement what they're already doing or just dive full on into a whole other path. I relate very much to what you described earlier with pretty much everything that I've trained in and gotten started. I didn't know anything about it. I was just like, this is it. I'm going all in. And so I loved it when you were sharing about that. But what do you notice for people who come to you and where they are, what they're needing, and how your center can support them?
Thank you, Grace. Yeah, I think people who are drawn to giving care to new families in particular, to people who are to women, to people going through this, new early stages of parenthood where we don't have the structure of support in our society. And so people recognize that. People who are seeking meaning in what their work is, they want to make a difference and they want to perhaps help others experience something different than what they did. Not all of the people who come into many people who come into our program are not parents. Many are. There's a range of people who are, we have as young as 19 years old. We have as old as in their 60s, 70s, who are drawn to, giving back and helping. And people who are deeply conscious that there's more out there than what we think of as postpartum care, that it can be more impactful, that it's important about food. It's important. There's so much more than we understand postpartum care to be. And people want those gaps filled in, and they want to be able to apply it to themselves. Oftentimes, I think that's the surprise there, that they realize how learning these things in order to care for other people completely transforms their own experience as well. But it is a community that I am very, very intentional about creating spaces for expansion, spaces for people to arrive exactly how they are, where they are, who they are, and discovering together. It's a learning space that I care very deeply about, and I have incredible sisters who teach with me, online or in person, sometimes both, depending on what people want. But it's an honor to facilitate. It's an honor to hold it, this beautiful little school that we're growing. So thank you for letting me talk about it.
I love it. I'm so happy that it's happening in the world, and it is so needed. And where can people, we'll have all of your links in the show notes, but for those who are listening on the go, where can people find more about your work, engage with what you're putting out regularly, stay in the know, stalk you on the internet? Where do you like people to do that?
Yes, if you are called to conscious postpartum care, to Ayurveda, to women's health, come find us, sacredwindowstudies.com or Instagram, Sacred Window Studies. I think it's Sacred Window Studies across all the socials. But we are a very warm group of people, and we love to connect individually with people who are drawn to this. And there's lots of ways to binge. We have, of course, our beautiful podcast, which Grace is on recently. But it's wonderful, and you're all welcome.
Wonderful. Christine, it was such a joy having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for sharing about your work and your journey and your perspectives. I'm so grateful. And I know the listeners will enjoy it, if not more than I did. And thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your work and for your presence. And thanks for coming on.
Likewise, Grace. Thank you so much for what you do.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Center for Sacred Window Studies has been training postpartum care providers, professionals who work with new families, and individuals passionate about postpartum care since 2018. We regularly host live free events alongside our online and in-person training and certification programs. Hop on our newsletter list to get direct access to all of our events and community support gatherings. Our mission is not only in training conscious postpartum care providers, but in fostering a robust, informed, and thriving community of postpartum professionals. Once you step inside, you're family forever. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com to add your email to our newsletter list. You can support our work by subscribing to the Sacred Window podcast and sharing with someone you know who would love it. Thanks for being here and participating in the culture-wide shift that recognizes the need for and the importance of conscious postpartum care.